Thank you all for joining us once again for the Unify Summit. This is your host, Nathan Crane, and today we are joined by a truly remarkable human being. Dr. Gabriel Cousens is a world-renowned author, a globally loved spiritual teacher, a medical doctor from Columbia Medical School, a Native American sun dancer, and a rabbi in Patagonia, Arizona. Dr. Gabriel Cousens is the founder and director of the Tree of Life Foundation and specializes in whole human and planetary healing. Dr. Cousens, thank you so much for joining us once again.
I'm delighted to be part of this, and this is the most important thing we can be talking about, is sustainability. And I have a particular angle on it, okay, which is I'm not here to sustain the planet. I'm part of the living planet. My blood is the blood of the planet. It's the rivers of the planet. My skin is the topsoil of the planet. You know, my flesh is the earth of the planet. So my heart is really the fire energy of the planet. So I see it very personally. Anybody who's offending the earth is offending me. If I'm not treating my body right, I'm offending the living planet. So it's a oneness. It's not a stewardship in my mind. I'm not saying people don't see it as a stewardship, because people do. But for me, it's taking care of myself. There's no difference. I am the living planet. My breath is the atmosphere. My lungs are the trees. That's how I look at it. So it's a world view, so to speak. From my angle. So that I just want to explain that of how I see it, how I see God, and how I see everything we do.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a perfect opening to obviously we're calling it the Unify Summit leading up to Unify Fest as ways to inspire and encourage us and help each of us to live a more unified, integrated life of oneness. And so, you know, you're coming from multiple backgrounds and ancient teachings with decades of experience to help kind of bring a whole human and planetary unified perspective. And I think that's really unique. And I think there's a lot we can learn from what you have to share. And so I'd love for us to kind of start from the first perspective from the Essenes, because you have a really strong foundation of teachings from the Essenes. And I'd love for you first to share why the perspective from the Essenes is an important and meaningful set of teachings that can apply to our current times.
Well, the Essenes, and I wrote about it in my book Sevenfold Peace, had a very holistic approach. Okay, they would pray, they would eat together, they'd go work in the fields, and they would also do community service.
This is about 2,500 years ago, or what time frame?
Okay, so the Essenes really were known about 500 BC. They came out of the prophetic tradition, and they were mostly in Mount Carmel. Jesus, John the Baptist were Essenes, and then they were born in the Carmel area by the Sea of Galilee. Okay, most people think the Essenes were in Qumran, which is right by the Dead Sea. They didn't get to there until about 186 BC. So let's go back more than that. So, and they were spread all over the Middle East. Okay, so they were what we call Damascus. They were in Egypt. There's certain lakes they were at, Lake Mariatis, where they were the healing Essenes. So, but they really were holistic, and the way they broke up their day was in 4-hour segments, doing, as I mentioned, these things. So they had their community, they had their work in the gardens, fields, or healing, whatever. And then they really had their overall community service, and they had their prayer and meditation time, and they also had their eating time. And each was given a sacred role in the bigger picture. So they lived, to the best we can tell from the writings, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, they lived in conscious harmony with themselves and with the environment. And that's the unique thing of what they were really talking about.
So what did a normal day look like in the Essene society? You said it's broken into 4-hour segments. There's community. There's working the farms. But I mean, is there enough information that you found that can give us a little more
there
insight?
generally is. There were writers who lived with them. Okay, and Pliny was one of them, and so forth. Josephus was too. But basically, their day started early in the morning. They would get up and they would take a mikvah, a cleansing bath. Okay? And these were ritual things. So the mikvah is seen as the womb, the water. So when they went into the womb, and the waters of the womb are considered the most healing waters. So they're starting off by going into the womb of the mother. Okay? After they did that, they would dress in white, and then they would have their prayer and meditation time. So all that took maybe about 4 hours. Then they would, second section, they would gather for the sacred meal. And I'm going to use the word sacred because that's how they saw food. That's how they were doing it. And it was also a communion, a social community, if that makes sense. So that went on, and there were teachings and sharings. Then they would go off into their, I'm going to call it livelihood, and a lot were farmers and a lot were healers, but they also were carpenters. That they did a lot of basic work. Also, some were scribes, because part of their thing was to maintain the scriptures. Now, the other thing about it is that they were biblically based. Now, why is that important? Because to really understand the Bible or Torah, we are talking literally about a shamanic way of life. Now, the land of Israel, and this is all, it's very Native American. That's why I love the Native American. So where your elders are buried, that's where your home is. Okay, it's a way of thinking. If, this is the teachings, if you were out of order as a society, it wouldn't rain. Literally, it wouldn't rain. And so they'd have droughts, and then they'd have prayer circles, and they would get their societal harmony, and then the rains would come. So what I'm trying to say is that the land reflected their consciousness.
I have to say, I have to say something with that. Ever since I started growing food a few years ago, even dabbling with it, I'm not kidding. 9 out of 10 times when I go outside to plant, it rains. And it's not me looking at the clouds. It's not looking at the weather. I mean, sometimes just a few clouds appear out of nowhere and sprinkle. Not enough to water, but just sprinkle. Or a huge rain comes in, and it's like, I always get this feeling like it's a confirmation I'm doing the right thing. Putting seeds in the earth. I feel like it's the earth saying, I love it that you're doing this. Please keep doing it. And by the way, here's some water to help you along the way. I've never shared that with anybody else before, but it struck me when you said that.
Well, that's exactly what we're talking about. So they saw themselves completely connected to the earth. They saw themselves as part of the living planet. And whatever they did reflected back into the earth. If you're going to be, conscious and alive and seeing the angelic forces behind things, everything's going to grow. Because in the scene is every blade of grass had an angel behind it. So when you're living in that holiness, and I'm going to say more than respect, but sacred communion, then you're aware of the forces behind. So they understood the use of the land.
Did
Go
they
ahead.
have any kind of monetary exchange system, or was it all just sharing in kind of an
It was the scenes was all sharing. The scenes were to join the scenes. Everybody put in their possessions, and they were a community. So everybody contributed to the community, but everybody had to really contribute. Okay, whatever that
they
was.
had skills or
So that
whatever? Yeah,
was. Say it again.
they traded skills or knowledge
Correct.
or whatever, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And they also did charity. So they went out and they were healers and they were teachers of this whole way of life. So that's how it all came together. But the key is they saw themselves as one with the living planet, and that particular land shamanically was given theirs. Now, not anywhere else. They weren't given Great Britain. They weren't given America. They were given this land, and they had to relate to it in the highest way. And so that was extremely shamanic. Now, there are other pieces to the shamanism, but it was Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. They were really shamans. I mean that literally. I don't mean it figuratively. Okay, they worked as shamans. They lived as shamans. They related to the land in that way. The other thing is,
If you look at what Jesus actually did, or what the stories talked about what Jesus did, that's exactly the definition of what shamans do, right?
exactly, and he was an Essene healer, among other things. But he also lived off the land. They lived very simply. They ate simply. Basically, his older brother James only wore white, never cut his hair, uh, only ate vegetables and a little bread, and only drank water. That's it. Very simple way, and they were always in service, whatever that happened to be. There were different levels of service, but it's all the consciousness of the oneness, that it's one human community, but it's one living planet community.
It sounds
Now,
like paradise.
yes, and they did really well with that, because the living conditions weren't easy. Thank you. And what I mean that is, the Dead Sea is the lowest place on the planet. It gets really hot. It doesn't get very cold, but it gets really hot. You're like 500 meters below sea level. And you really did have to live deeply in harmony. Now, by the Sea of Galilee, a little different, because it was green and very, very beautiful. And I've been to where Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount. It's completely luscious. You know? So, as I said, they lived in all kinds of environments, but the same presence was there, okay, and the same harmony. So it's a way of living in the world where you are seeing and better experiencing the divine in all, including yourself. So that's kind of the key to their way of life, is seeing everything as sacred. They also lived in harmony with the sun and the moon. They were primarily on what we would call a moon calendar. A little interface with the sun, but primarily everything was on the moon cycle. So all their holidays mostly were with the full moon or with the new moon. So everything was on that cycle. And we do that here at the tree, incidentally. We have a sunrise and sunset, what we call Agnihotra, which is from India, where we do a little fire ceremony with cow dung, and we bless the planet. It's for the healing of the planet. It has to be done at sunrise, sunset. So we have that cycle. Everything we do here is based on the sunrise, sunset, our whole schedule. So it's a little difficult because we're always changing our schedule, because that's reality. That's shamanic reality. Now, we do have a scene gathering once a year. We're having one actually in August 8th, 19th and the 22nd. It's about a 4-day gathering, here at the tree, so people can actually experience it. Okay, our gardening is done the same way. Okay, and again, it's not a new concept, right? You garden with the seasons, you work with the sun, you work with the moon, you get the cycles right, and that's how a lot how we do that. And we don't actually use. Go ahead.
Yeah. So how do people apply the teachings of the Essene into the modern world? Because for me, like, my dream is to live like that, totally in harmony with the land, totally 100% sustainable and regenerative. My dream in the near future is to not be using any of this type of technology, and I'll get there, and it may take me time, but I know most people just, that scares most people to think like that. I see that as moving to the future. A lot of people see that as, going backwards. But what are some of the teachings? Because, you wrote the book, The Essene Sevenfold Path. You have, what are some of the things that the Essenes did that people could apply now, even in the modern world, to live more sustainably and to have more fulfillment in their lives?
I've been living this way since 1976. Okay, we lived for 3 years off, totally independent. We had a well, we had a generator. We lived off a battery, solar type situation. Our windmills didn't work so well because wind would blow them, well, it'd blow them down, But we were 100% off the grid. Okay, and I think that's kind of an important concept. We were really connected with our neighbor community. Started, where is it? It's in Northern California, but Real Goods. Do you know Real Goods? Have you heard of Real Goods? It was the very, very first kind of back to the earth. I mean, I can't say very first kind of store. It had everything. We had the first wind generators. We had this. Now, I didn't own that store. My neighbors did. So we worked closely with them, and we tested out all these gizmos. I mean, but Essenes focus on simplicity. For example, we tried this way to power a house and this way to power a house. So what we did, we had 2 300-watt batteries in our car. Big batteries, okay? Wherever we would drive stuff, anywhere, they would charge up, and then we'd plug our house into the car. Now that's how we lived, of these batteries in the car that ran the house. We had an indoor compost privy, with kind of a wind-generated thing. Okay, we created, because it gets cold in Mendocino, we created a stove that went through the 3 levels. We had kind of levels, but the pipe went through all 3 levels. So heat was being given off in all different ways. So we got very creative. Our hot water came from solar heated. We used these oil barrels, the 50-gallon oil barrels, cleaning them black, put them on the roof, boiling hot water, even in the winter. So we really lived off the forces far back as 1976. Our garden was also that way. I did a lot of gardening myself. I just love it. For me, personally, okay, gardening is the way of really experiencing the oneness with creation, as a co-creator in that way, but really even less than a co-creator. You're really just part of the scene, of the creative scene, of the energetic scene. So it was really a lot of fun, and I began to do a variety of little fun things. Like, we began, this is a little bit later, playing music to the plants. And they would open their pores. 11-pound beet, 18-pound beet, and 11-pound carrot. That's big, okay? But in other words, the nature responds. Okay, so you're doing it with love. You're playing music. They open their pores. Everything is going in harmony. So these are very real things. And then I do a few other little extra things. But what I'm saying is, we're part of it. We're part of the play. I see ourselves as organisms in the topsoil. That's what I'm saying. We're not exactly, everything's a co-creator, but we are literally organisms in the topsoil. And that's how I know it's humbling, but actually it's pretty accurate. Okay. So when you have that attitude, you're naturally part of things, seeing the sacredness in everything and acting in that way. So that's the Essene way in modern times, is still humility, appreciating the sacredness, seeing the divine behind all creation. Okay, so we're relating to it that way. And who we are is reflected in the land, and the land reflects back to us. So it's a total shamanic way of living. The medicines come from it. You take modern medicine today, it's totally out of tune with any level of reality. Okay, and most people probably know that. Okay, I mean, you can take the vaccines. I'm going to tell you something, and most people are probably against vaccines, but I want to make a point that it's way more sophisticated than that. So when you stop measles, with the measles vaccine, what you're doing is setting people up for cancer, increased rates of cancer in their 40s and 50s, because you've upset the ecology, and that measles virus that you get actually protects you from cancer. That's pretty intense when you get it. Or they stop this kind of virus, let's say the herpes virus and something. Okay, great. And now we're having an outbreak of herpes zoster in adults that are killing people. So there's a whole ecological balance. If we don't respect that and think we can just overpower it, it makes a huge mess. And vaccines, as we see, are making a serious mess and actually making people sicker. But I'm making this ecological statement about them. They disrupt the natural ecology, the natural immunity, and the result is we get a big health mess. That's an example. So in a sense, that nature gives us what we need for our healing. It gives us the wholeness of the foods. Real food has real energy. Not the synthetic food or white flour, white sugar, and junk food, but we get real nutrition. But nutrition is best understood as energy from the food. Okay, the biophotons from the food. When you go organic, we get a food and it's like it has all the life force of the cosmos in it. That's a very different idea than how big it is or how clean it looks and so forth. So our food becomes the life force. It's capturing the sunlight. We don't try to get in the way of that.
So I want to get deeper. I want to get deeper into the food in relationship to the health of the body and the planet. We're going to take a quick break. We've just got a quick message for everybody tuning in, and we'll be right back, and we'll get much deeper into that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Unify Festival in New Mexico. Beautiful gathering in its first year. I can't even imagine what it will be like next year.
This weekend has been one of the most magical experiences of my festival career.
I still feel like I haven't explored enough after 3 days, so it was awesome.
It has been the most inspiring and heart-centered festival I have ever been to.
Okay, thank you all so much for tuning in here. We're with Dr. Gabriel Cousens from the Tree of Life Foundation. It's been a fascinating conversation so far. And Dr. Cousens, you were just talking about the nutrition of the plants and actually having the the spiritual energy, if you will, that actually is what's lighting up our cells of our body. Can you talk more about that and the importance of that, and maybe a little bit about what's the difference between food that's grown by yourself or by hands organically without chemicals versus what people are buying in the grocery store?
Well, I'm going to start on a gross level because I think people need to understand that organic farming is equal to or 10% more productive. That's a very important point. So all these big they're really not as productive. I mean in what you're producing, okay? Quality of food, we can't even compare. But I want to just, understand it's more productive. And what they found per acre, the small farmer, which we're trying to do around the world, helping people, this small, 1 to 10 acre farmer his small farm is way more productive per acre than agribusiness. So we have a model that actually can really feed the world. It's a big deal when we think that way. Now, going from there, part of how it feeds the world is the food that's grown organically. Why do I say veganic? Because if you're using animal products, blood meal, bone meal, or manure, those animals are usually fed GMO, generally speaking. And then you're getting GMO, unless it's your own. Yeah. But most people aren't necessarily doing that. And so then you're getting GMO bacteria into your soils. So you're getting GMO. So that's why we do organic, veganic, because it's an extra protection against GMO, which is really, really detrimental. Okay, so part of the organic is the life force in the soil. We have life force from the sun and the air from all the elements, but life force in the soil. So we make a big effort to build the life force in the soil. And we use a 82 bacteria fungal type thing called EM, okay? And it was developed in Japan a little bit by accident, but it is effective microorganisms, and they grow into the soil and they activate the energy in the soil. That's really how we do it. It's extremely important. The other thing we do is we mineralize the soil with 1 to 1,000 or 1 to 10,000 of salt water diluted. But again, it's the ocean salt water, so it brings the ocean energy. Here we are in the desert. That's really important. So now we have activated the soil. Very, very important. Then we're planting according to the cycles of the moon, the sun, and that kind of thing. And we don't do everything by hand. We used to do that. We're kind of doubling our organic produce and creating an abundance. So, and we take the food to feed the senior center and things like that. But that's kind of the essence: is feed the soil, make the soil maximally alive, because most of the soils are dead. In traditional farming, the soils are killed. They actually have no life. And that's a huge problem. So the life in the soil is really a key, to growing very, very abundant crops. And so we're getting energy from the sun and the water and the air and from the soil. So that's kind of a key to how we look at it. And that's a little bit what the Essenes did too, is they made a real effort to energize the soil. I don't know the exact farming techniques they did, but they had to have done that. I mean, I see in Qumran where they are, I mean, it's deep desert. I mean, deep desert. And so they're able to get the soil to come alive. And I haven't been able to truly uncover their secrets with it, but they that's what's going on with them. So that
there at the Tree of Life, you get to see firsthand people come in with things like diabetes and heart disease and so many health issues, and you implement a nutritional program and a regimen, if you will, that you get to see people's health issues pretty much completely reversed. And what are the things you do? You do mostly, I mean, you do all plant-based diet. You do mostly everything raw, uncooked. You grow a lot of the food there, right? So, I mean, you're seeing firsthand results in people that when they change the energy of the food that's going into their bodies, how much their bodies actually change, which you're basing a lot of what you do, obviously, on what the Essenes were doing, yeah?
Right. And it's all natural. Okay, so people come for like what we call our 21-day program, and we have a special subset of type 2 diabetes program, and 61% of the type 2 non-insulin dependent are healed in 3 weeks, which is pretty significant. You know, when you said, oh, we can't heal it. 24% of the insulin dependent are off, and 86% of them are off their insulin. Now, what we find is after 3 weeks, more people heal. But in 3 weeks, we're getting that kind of thing. And so what are we doing? Well, besides a little bit of fasting to start with, they're getting the organic, veganic food, and they're getting the life force. Now, I've contrasted it with just vegan, cooked vegan, because there's a little research out on that. And the one paper I taught on it basically said if people do, the cooked vegan, they're going to decrease their medicine needs by 46%. Well, that's not bad.
You mean completely transferring from like a meat-based diet to a vegan diet, but cooked, not
cooked vegan,
not raw. Right. Okay.
Right. So, and now that's in 5.5 months.
And then 61% of their medicines are reduced. That's what you're saying?
Their medicines are reduced by 46%.
46%. Wow, that's huge.
Now, well, that's good. But so on a live food diet for 3 weeks, 97% of all medicines are gone.
Wow. Living foods diet, raw foods diet.
And we have 61% healed who are non-diabetic, non-insulin, and we have very high percentage of healing. So they didn't talk about any healing; they just said decreasing medication. 46%. We're looking at 97%. So the difference between raw organic and cooked vegan is quite dramatic.
Now, when you're talking about a living foods diet or raw foods diet, what do you base, the types of calories? Are you mostly doing vegetables? Are you mostly doing fruits? Is it a combination or a percentage of both?
So we don't really look at calories. That's kind of the allopathic view. Okay. What we look at, and basically it's a vegetable nuts and seeds, and sea vegetables. Okay, that's the diet, and made in a variety of very tasteful ways. Our specialty is good food that isn't sweet. That's a really key point. Okay, so that's what people get, and that diet is about 10 to 15% protein. Obviously plant-based protein. 25 to 45% plant-based raw fat, 25 to 45% plant-based, raw carbohydrate. And everybody's different because we are unique individuals. So we have to organize it to the uniqueness of that individual. Does that make sense? So it works, but well, we do use herbs, but some people are more sensitive to the fruit, and I don't want to disrupt it. Now, I'm not going to tell you that fruit causes diabetes. I'm not saying that because I don't think it necessarily does. Okay, directly, indirectly, fructose does not raise your blood sugar. Okay, it goes to your liver. It's metabolized by your liver. You got too much fructose, more than 25 grams a day, and the average American is 81 grams. You're going to have a very high rate of fatty liver disease because fructose gets transmuted into fat deposited in the liver. Okay, but the little bit of fruit we do when people are ready, there's 3 foods that don't really raise, that seem to be okay with diabetics. Okay, bilberries, blueberries, and green apples. But because people are a little variable, in the initial 3 weeks, we don't do that. We just let's just go with this. We know our results. We don't have to worry about how you're going to respond, whether the fructose is going to. See, fructose can imbalance what we call leptin and insulin hormonal secretions and the delicate balance between them. We don't want that happening. We're trying to bring it back into balance. But once they're stabilized, then we have a certain percentage of fruit that people can have if they want. It's just kind of a way of controlling the situation.
So what are some steps people can take? People watching us now that want to get to that next level of their own spiritual development, that next level of their own health and vitality. I know a lot of people watching are juggling with the idea of experimenting or becoming vegan, or at least adding more plants and more raw food to their diet. Some people watching are already fully into a live foods diet. But I know most people watching are just looking to go to that next level. I mean, what are some simple steps people can take to move in that direction?
So I kind of look at it, I'm going to talk a little cosmically, okay? And no spilling of blood. So no eating of meat, fish, chicken, or dairy. And I mentioned dairy because the cows aren't treated so well. When we're eating meat, fish, chicken, and dairy, we're taking in cruelty and pain and misery, and it affects us. And we're also taking in the victim consciousness of the animal, fish, or whatever that has been captured, tormented, and killed. So we're taking energy in that isn't good for us. Okay? That's the first thing. I think the other thing, when I say spilling of blood, now this is a little esoteric, but I think people can appreciate this. These are ancient biblical teachings. When you spill blood, it disrupts and feeds energetically negative energies and entities from the other planes. Okay, because most people are buying it in the store, doing this and that. They haven't done the right prayers. They haven't done what the Plains Indians used to do. Okay, so you have to have the right energetics, so it doesn't draw the negative forces. And we are disrupting, I'm going to say, the other planes. So we have to be aware of that. A lot of people don't know this, but this is, again, esoteric teaching, is often humans can be in an animal and they've devolved. And that soul can hook onto you if you don't know what you're doing and actually bring you down. These are very ancient teachings. There are ways that we work shamanically to release the soul that may be trapped in an animal, so that soul can go back and evolve. So I'm giving you a little bit deeper understanding because we need to know it's just not a hunk of flesh. We're dealing with energies. Okay, once we stop with the blood, then and I'm going to say the dairy, which is part of that pain and misery. Then we have grains and vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds. Ancient Taoist teachings use the word bigu, no grains. The ancient Taoist bigu, it's Chinese, bigu, bi and then gu, okay, no grains. So the Taoist teachings is back at 475 BC said if you want to walk on the jewel path liberation, in their language, bigu, no grains. And I think they talk about the demons in it, but I think they're talking about candida and some of the gluten gliadin problems. They knew something. They just didn't have modern language. Okay, that's fair enough. So once we got to there, then you're in a really pretty good diet.
Why no grains?
A lot of people don't get. It's a key.
From your research, from your experience, why no grains?
Well, diabetes, grains converts to sugar pretty much 100%. So it really ups your carbohydrate. Then you have the gluten gliadin problem. That's a whole bunch of grains. And we don't really need grains. Grains were only introduced about 10,000 years ago.
What if you're super active? What if you're like a really active person, like running and just athletic and active every day? Can your body process and transmutate that grain into, from sugar that can be burned so it doesn't become a problem? Or do you still think that it's a problem?
Well, that is what some people who are fruitarian do. They exercise a whole lot, 3 hours a day. I don't have time to exercise 3 hours a day. Most people don't. So I would put it on that level. Yes, you can. But there's one more key that's really important. We have about 20 to 30,000 genes, maybe 200,000 gene variations. Okay, we've got to individualize the diet to our constitution. This is not a religious discussion. On chromosome 19, it tells you how much carbohydrate, how much protein, how much fat you need, and the key is to find that ratio. And in my books, Conscious Eating, Spiritual Nutrition, Rainbow Green Line for Cuisine, mentioned a little bit, and There's a Cure for Diabetes. I actually explain how to do that and have a little test that you can do it. So you have to eat according to your constitution. About 70% of the population needs a higher protein diet, and about 30% needs a lower protein diet. What does that mean? Well, the research, kind of get a little detailed here, shows that we need between 35 and 70 grams of protein. It's really not a lot of protein, okay? If your person needs more protein, you're closer to the 70 grams. Now that's called the mTOR pathway. That's the pathway for longevity and anti-cancer. So if we can hit between 35 and 70, we're doing really well. And we can easily do that on a vegan diet and vegan lifestyle. So that's the really great and good news on that story. So we have to get the right amount of protein. And this is true. I'll give an example. When we, this is research done on men. Men about 40 to 60 have a certain amount of protein. If they get too much protein, they get double the amount of mortality and quadruple the amount of cancer. Not so good. But with age, men need to increase their protein. So I'm reading this, and above 60, you should increase your protein. So I'm above 60. I'm, close to mid-70s. So I'm looking now, okay, let's do it. I add 1 tablespoon of blue-green algae. 1 tablespoon. I jumped from 25 pull-ups, and I got up to about 100 pull-ups. 25, where I started, in 2 weeks I was at, close to 40 pull-ups. All I did was move the protein that much.
So you added 1 tablespoon of blue-green algae to your diet per day. per day.
per day. That slight adjustment, and then that was what I needed to make it work metabolically to greatly increase my strength. So, I mean, I'm letting you an idea that we have to be very thoughtful about the adjustment where we are in our life cycle. You know, kids need more protein. People maybe 60 and above need a little bit more protein. I don't eat a lot of protein. I'm a low protein person. I probably get 10% of my diet's protein. That's plenty, you know. Because when I was 60, I did 601 push-ups on the 6th day of a fast. I don't need a lot, okay? We're all a little different, but I'm trying to make a point here. We have to eat towards our constitution and towards our stage of life. So if you're above 60, and that probably applies for women too, you need to increase your protein a little bit. And I had, as I say, within a week, I had a dramatic improvement. Wow. It kind of really woke me up to making these shifts. So the food has to be, to me, live because it has the most about biophoton energy, which is the energy of the cosmos, which we get from the sun, the wind. It's totally shamanic, okay? When you cook it, we lose a lot of that biophoton energy. That's the difference. Healing power. There's a tremendous healing power in the live food. And it's that biophoton energy. Second thing is, when you cook your food, you lose 50% of your protein, 60 to 70% of your minerals, 95% of your phytonutrients. Now, what is that total? Roughly, you can eat half as much and get all the nutrition you need. Now, we spend a lot of time digesting food, a lot of energy digesting food. Okay, fine. If I can eat half as much, and I don't really eat dinner. I just have, I have my juice for dinner. Fine. That's all I need. So I'm eating half as much. I'm getting stronger with age. What's going on? I'm just following the natural laws. That's what's going on. There's no big mystery. I'm getting all this biogenic energy coming in, and it works because food is energy. And so my focus is on the energy of the food. That's why we grow the food the way we do. I eat a lot of sprouts too. And then each person has to find the right real genetic constitution and eat according to that. So none of that's complicated. It's very exciting. But what are we doing? We're eating the air. We're eating the earth. We're eating the sun. Whew. It's very profound when you sit and you're eating that way because you're taking in all the forces of nature. That's very cool. So that's kind of very much for me a shamanic way of life and living as part of the topsoil, and we live like a plant, So that's kind of how I look at it, how it works, and we're getting the highest amount of biophoton energy. Now, the other thing is, if you get half as much, the general research shows, the less you eat, the longer you live. Okay, so it's a slam dunk. What's the big deal? You're eating live food, you can eat half as much, you're getting all this cosmic energy, and the less you eat, the longer you live, because less calories, the more energy. So it's like a win-win-win-win, and that's why the live food is such a high-powered healing kind of event, with the diabetes, where we get such great results. And the truth is about 50% of the people who come are eating meat, so they have to go through that transition, and so it's very exciting to see that.
Well, and that's one of the nice things there at the Tree of Life is you get to help guide people to transition into a living foods diet, and it's nice to have that support. I know when my wife and I, we transitioned years ago to 100% raw living food diet. We did it for about a year, like very strict, very hardcore, and then when we kind of transitioned out of that, we still have a high, maybe a 50%, 60% raw food, vegan diet, but we cook our food. But I'm, considering upping my, living food to, a higher percentage again, and really experimenting with that once again. But Gabriel, I just want to say, it's always fascinating, always an honor to speak with you. You have so much to share. I just appreciate all your wisdom and experience and everything you do for humanity and you do for the planet, and you live by example. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing with us here today.
Well, it's a joy, and I look forward to coming to the workshop that's going on to really share the whole lifestyle the best we can. Incidentally, I find 80% live food is works. It's almost as good as 100%.
80%. Okay, that's good to know.
Absolutely.
I think I'm going to set a new goal then.
Yeah, but I enjoy. This is just a fun way to live. It's a fun way to be. So what I'm saying is, I've been living this way pretty much since '76. And it's just, I like it. Living as part, and that's why I don't say sustainable. I mean, it's sustainable, but you're living as part of the living planet. We are one living organic organism, and it's a very empowering way to live. So that it's kind of a worldview is what I'm saying.
Absolutely, yeah, and a complete life shift for all of us that I think we all need to really take that step forward in that direction if we want to see a healthy planet for the future. So wonderful. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Cousens, and for everyone tuning in, you can learn more about Dr. Cousens, pick up copies of his book, learn about the Tree of Life, all at drcousens.com. That's drcousens, COUSENS.com. Thank you all for tuning in with us here at the Unify Summit, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.
And thank you for your good work. It's really appreciated, and I'll see you then.